more a part of Asia than Australia, partly because of its climate, partly its multicultural population, but mainly its location. Darwin is closer to Singapore or Bangkok than it is to Sydney or Melbourne. Asian fishermen were coming here to trade with the Aborigines long before the first Europeans even set eyes on Australia. Today there are 50 or 60 different nationalities or ethnic minorities, and among the biggest groups are the Asians. The far north around Darwin was certainly the first part of Australia to be truly multicultural. In our centenary year, 1888, Asians outnumbered Europeans by an overwhelming 4-1, and the economy of Darwin, like many parts of Southeast Asia, was in the hands of the Chinese. Like the rest of Australia, Darwin then went through a phase of officially sanctioned racism, and the Asians were all but driven out. Fortunately, that's changed, and Asians who are 5th and 6th generation Australians are now among the city's most prominent citizens. Darwin's mayor, Alec Fong Lim, doesn't like the word multicultural. He prefers cosmopolitan.
Just because they've now become Australians, that they don't have to give up their culture, their religion, their languages or customs. But what they should do is make sure they share it with the rest of the Australian community so that there's no backlash from the rest of the community. And I believe it's also very, very important that they learn English, because this is an English-speaking country, and the lack of communication is probably one of the main reasons why there is this discrimination. You know, if you can't communicate with somebody, you say, oh, well, you go back where you came from, whatever.
Alec Fong Lim came to Darwin when it was truly a frontier town, and he's seen it change over and over again. It's a new city, built on successive sets of ruins. Cyclones in 1897 and 1937, Japanese bombing in World War II, and most recently, the violence of Cyclone Tracy that smashed the city into splinters and rubble. These days, it's hard to imagine the devastation that was Darwin on Christmas morning, 1974. But there are some powerful reminders left by the city's residents. This isn't modern art or some street-side sculpture. These are house girders, once strong and straight, but left twisted into these shapes by the winds of Cyclone Tracy. Even buildings of solid stone were destroyed. The old Palmerston Town Hall survived everything else for 100 years. The ruins are now preserved as another reminder. The doorway of the Anglican Church is all that's left of another solid stone building, kept as a memorial to the dead in front of a new church they hope is cyclone-proof. The new Darwin is a changed place. Its reputation as a hot, miserable and raw frontier town has given way to a growing city with its fair share of sophistication. Modern hotels are among the best in Australia, and Darwin now devotes much of its energy to tourism, the second largest industry of the north. Despite the modern new face, the people here are never far from the risks of living surrounded by the untamed north. It isn't every place that has to employ a permanent team of crocodile catchers, a necessity to keep the city safe. As a coastal centre, Darwin has an ever-present crocodile problem, and these regular patrols travel into the harbour by night searching for crocs. They don't catch many big ones anymore. The aim is to pull them out when they're still small enough to handle. Even so, this 2-metre specimen is still powerful enough to kill an unwary swimmer on a Darwin beach. They've learned to live with crocs by controlling them in the cities and avoiding them in the wild. But the locals have been beaten by a creature far less formidable than the croc. The magpie goose defeated a grand plan called the Humpty-Doo Project. Fog Dam was built in the 1950s to grow long-grained rice for the Asian market. In retrospect, an extremely bad idea. For a start, any country rich enough to import rice was capable of growing it. And secondly, no one took account of the magpie geese, which flew in from all over the north because they love rice almost as much as flying. In the end, they ate the entire first crop. You can almost hear them laughing even these days. The magpie geese watching the dam fill with water, then moving in on the crop that fed them while they took humpty-doo away from the humans. At least the top-enders gained something out of the dam, a tourist attraction that's one of the best bird-watching areas in the north, especially for geese. Tourism has been the territory's economic saviour. A few places like Katherine Gorge have been well known for their spectacular beauty since before the turn of the century. Katherine Gorge is in reality a series of 13 deep cuts in the rock, stretching for 14 kilometres along a twisting course cut through sandstone by the Katherine River. A tourist business that moves like clockwork takes hundreds of people every day into the timeless grandeur of the most accessible of these gorges. In the wet season, they have the added bonus of being able to swim at the bases of seasonal waterfalls. But even with the constant flow of visitors, the magnificence of the place never lets you feel crowded. Cruising along the gorge is like nothing I've ever done before. There's a lonely feeling here. It's an eerie feeling. It's almost prehistoric. The rocks themselves are 1,600 million years old, but the gorge has been exactly in this form as long as men have walked the earth. Like Kakadu Park, this place has been handed back to Aboriginal ownership. At the time of the handover, in the early 1980s, it was a hot issue. But the Aborigines won, and time has shown little change in the way the gorges are used. Tour operators still run their boats. Visitors still have everything they need. And the people who come to live and work here still develop the same respect and affection for their surroundings.